Hey, it's Jamie Zock from DotWeekly.com. Today, I want to talk about how you go about buying a domain name that's already owned by somebody. Okay, there's really three options for you to be able to find out who owns a specific domain name. So the first one is Whois. The Whois system is basically a database of who owns what domain name. So if you visit a Whois service and you type in the domain name, it will say John Doe owns this name, here's their address, phone number, email address. The Whois used to be very good, but recently in the European Union they passed a privacy law, and it's called GDPR, and it basically blocks everybody's information. So some domain name owners have the option of removing that block, and then you can see specifically who owns that domain name. So you can contact them directly based upon the information that's provided in the Whois. The second way to contact the domain name owner is to visit the domain name itself. See what resolves on the page. There may be a for sale lander and says this domain name is for sale, may have a price, a contact form, or whatever. If the domain name is a fully developed website, well, this decreases your chances of purchasing this domain name because it's probably already in use and they wouldn't be interested in selling it. So visiting the domain name gives you a good idea of potentially if the domain name is for sale or if it's in use. So if you're really not sure what to do and you check the Whois but it's blocked and you visited the website and there really wasn't any contact information on it, your next best option is to use an experienced domain name buyer broker. So I'm going to go into further details about why you should consider using a domain name buyer broker, and we're going to do that now. Okay, let's talk about knowledge. The knowledge of the actual domain name buying process. How does it work? Do you just give them money? Do you write them a check and hope that they give you the domain name? No, that's really not how it works. So having a full understanding of the process of actually buying a domain name, paying for it, and safely receiving it, that is something that you need to understand. And again, a domain name buyer broker does this likely almost on a daily basis. So they are very familiar. They have proper contacts within these services that are used. So it could be the domain name registrar, getting it transferred from the past owner to the new owner, or the escrow process and getting funds transferred. A lot of times there's a little bit of, it could be delays or however you want to explain it. So these things can be easily explained to you by the domain name buyer broker, and you have an idea of what to expect. Do I pay for the domain name and get it today? Sometimes that might be the case. Most of the time it's about 5 to 7 days before escrow can process the funds, and if the domain name needs to be pushed or if it needs to be transferred from one registrar to another. Okay, let's talk about experience. I've been involved in the domain name industry by itself since 2006. I live and breathe domain names. I know exactly what goes on every single day within the domain name industry. I know the processes and the procedures followed by many domain name investors of where they list the domain name, how long they're going to test for traffic, what's their main reason for purchasing the domain name, who they are. I mean, everybody seems to set like a process of what they do. Do they specifically purchase a domain name to test it for traffic? Do they only purchase a domain name to sell it? So there's a lot of things that relate to experience. Is the person shady? Whatever. So a lot of that I just see and know on a daily basis. So just by me looking at who the owner is tells me a lot about them and the potential about purchasing the domain name. So research is something that's very important and always done by a domain name buyer broker. They will always have your back. So what I mean by that is that they're going to research this domain name from maybe all the way back to the very first time that it was registered. And they're going to know the history of the name. What was it, a developed website? What was it used for? Was there MX records on the domain name? Was it stolen? So with high valued domain name assets, that's something that isn't always talked about, but the fact is that a lot of domain names are stolen. So if it's stolen, it's basically a dead asset. So even if you paid $100,000 for this domain name and oh, it's mine and whatever, that might not be the case, because if the past owner figures out, hey, my domain is gone, where did it go? It was actually stolen. They file a lawsuit, the domain name gets locked down, and eventually, probably through some court proceedings and so on and so forth, all of a sudden that domain name is taken from its current owner, even though they may have not stolen it, and it's returned to the rightful owner. So it becomes a dead asset. So even though that you spent $100,000 to purchase this domain name, you may have bought it from somebody that stole it. So that's a problem. That's often detected by somebody like myself that does deep research into domain names, and it protects you by using a domain name buyer broker that's experienced and fully knowledgeable within the domain name space. So consider that. So another thing to talk about is connections. I know a lot of people within the domain name space. You likely do not. So I likely know the person maybe on a first name basis. We've spoke before, we've worked on other deals before. So this, it may not seem like a very important thing, but having good connections within the domain name industry is something vital, and I've been working on it since 2006. So just getting in the door is something that's very important. They could simply ignore your emails because they don't know who you are. They don't like your starting offer. They don't like the way that you approach them. Maybe you're trying to hide who you are, and they have experienced this many times before and they just don't like it. Options. Is that something that you considered? Maybe you're stuck on one domain name. Is it really the best domain name that you need to buy? Domain name buyer brokers understand the full market within the domain space. They have connections that allow them to see domain names that are for sale that you might not even know about. So a good thing to consider when speaking with a domain name buyer broker is the options. Is this the best name that I can get for my money? So if you have a target domain name that you would like to purchase, I would highly suggest you use a domain name buyer broker. The reason for this is experience. Domain name buyer brokers do this every day. They know exactly where to look. They know processes to find who the owner is, and they've negotiated a lot of domain name deals. So I think that even if you pay 10 to 20% commission on the purchase of your domain name, it can save you more money and time, and also provide you with a security blanket that the domain that you're buying isn't a stolen asset. So if you need to purchase a domain name, you basically get one shot at purchasing it, because if you tick off the owner that owns it currently, and you go in uneducated and present what's considered like a lowball offer and upset them, they will not reply to any of your emails no matter what you do or say. You've upset them. So it's good to go into the fight with somebody that's experienced, that has a lot of knowledge, and is going to help you. So consider using a domain name buyer broker when you're looking to purchase a domain name that's already owned by somebody.